Happy Wednesday, UnWoke Nation. I'd like to welcome you to episode 153 of the UnWoke Show, where free speech is welcome, all subjects are on the table, and your boys Rich and Tim bring you the latest and greatest for your entertainment, baby. I'm your host, Rich, and my co-host here. How you doing, Tim?
Oh, great, Rich, man. Glad to be back, guys. We did take a week off for vacation. Had to get out of here before we got a bunch of snow dumped on us. But anyway, we are back live with you guys again. By now, you know where you can find us on all the major podcasting platforms. You can reach us directly as well at feedback@unwoketheshow.com. Again, that is feedback@unwoketheshow.com. And tonight, guys, we're going back to Minnesota, but in a different capacity. Mm-hmm. Okay, as you know, the recent stories that have come out of Minnesota as it relates to ICE. You know, we had the death of Renee Good, then we had the death of a hospital nurse while protesting ICE. And that has led me down the path, what has technology enabled us to do, right? What are our phones are allowing us to do today that, you know, we didn't have 20 some years ago? Mm-hmm. And how is that tied to the story? Well, most of us scroll past stories like this in seconds. Another headline, another protest, another argument about enforcement, policy, and who's right. But this one hits differently because the people at the center aren't politicians, activists with decades of experience, or professional commentators. They're teenagers. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
Two brothers who could be worrying about school, sports, or what to do on the weekend, instead choose to stand in freezing temperatures with phones in their hands, documenting federal enforcement activity. Not shouting, not leading chants, watching, recording, sharing. That alone raises a question bigger than politics. What kind of moment are we living in when kids feel like someone has to keep the record? This episode isn't about turning teenagers into heroes or villains. All right, let's be clear about that. It's about understanding why a generation that grew up online sees documentation as a civic responsibility and what that says about society's trust in the people who are supposed to provide answers. Okay, let that sink in for a minute. Let that sink that you've got two kids who see it as a civic responsibility and what that says about our society's trust in people who are supposed to provide answers.
Right.
Okay, those answers being mainstream media, mm-hmm. Okay, local news outlets. Okay. The teenagers' names are Sam and Ben, but to federal immigration agents they interact with daily, the two boys wielding cell phones and taking down plate numbers are a duo known as the Brothers. Okay. The 16 and 17-year-old Chicago siblings said they have earned an array of nicknames since becoming dedicated witnesses documenting the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz. Okay. Which, again, that started out in Chicago.
Right.
The turbocharged, if you will, immigration crackdown that swept through the Windy City neighborhoods starting back in September. Okay. Here's where it goes a little different. Now the boys are trailing agents in Minnesota. Okay. Following the epicenter of immigration enforcement in the U.S. as it shifted north to the Twin Cities. They are part of a ballooning wave of observers across the North Star State. Mm-hmm. Okay. Where the tensions have soared during encounters between thousands of federal agents and protesters, unwavering and furious in the wake of the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. You know, think about that for a second.
Well, I mean, it's kind of some things we had discussed before, and we kind of noticed this going, you know, into last year as we were trying to start up with season 3, where so that as you had mentioned before about the mainstream media, or as people now start looking at the legacy media also, the legacy media has been losing people's trust, not just in this last year because of the elections and all, but I think they've been losing the trust for almost probably the last decade for sure. And when I say that, we start going back to situations like, the whole situation with former NBC Nightly News Brian Williams and those other so and then when they started doing some polls, they were finding out that a good majority of people when polled were saying that they don't trust the traditional media as your ABC, NBC, Fox News, whatever,
CBS,
CNN, but what has changed now is that you now have it where we just witnessed how important podcasts, have become, and that so many people are able to go into a podcast while they're listening in their car or at their lunch, something like that. And they trust podcast, and also, which is why UnWoke Nation, we thank you guys so much for listening to us, for all these years. They trust that people who do podcasts are going to not be biased, not be going out there with a narrative. I mean, it's like, yes, we call ourselves the UnWoke Nation and also, but, we understand whereas that, we're not just going to put one particular thing out there. We're going to say, okay, we're going to find the facts for our audience and make sure they get the links to what we have found.
Right.
And I think that trust is something that has grown a lot. I think that trust happened to affect a lot of the election that happened,
right?
In 24. And now when we look at these two young men, and everybody has a camera. I mean, as you look at a lot of these kids where they're millennials, so like that. I mean, they practically got slapped on the butt when they were born or given congratulations. It's a boy, here's his iPhone.
Right. Or here's your iPad.
Well,
here's your
exactly.
Here's your social media.
Right.
This is your life.
Right. Exactly. And that's what they grew up with and were. So that's why I think, for them, they now feel that, they have the opportunity to, be that rising type of network or whatever you want to call it.
So, we have talked, I could almost say ad nauseum about Minnesota and about ICE. The same in California, the same in New York, right? We have done numerous stories, about illegal immigration. But what makes this story different, and I had not heard of this until I started doing my research for this story, is that Sam and Ben are trained ICE watchers. Okay.
They're high school kids. How's that possible?
They're
trained ICE watchers.
Yeah. They're documenting federal immigration agents' actions with cell phone video and quickly warning of agents' locations with whistles and car horns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because for those of you guys who are living outside the country there seems to be a pretty standard thing you see for a lot of protesters, that whenever protesters who are following them or people who might be in these areas where ICE happens to be, if there's a situation where they are arresting someone, whether it might be an illegal immigrant or criminal,
right,
something like that, they start blowing whistles, and I guess to let people know that ICE is there, and also so somebody came up with some genius idea to do that, I guess. So
what intrigued me, obviously, and the first that I had heard about this again is unfortunately what happened to Renee Good. Okay. About how people were notifying that ICE was rolling up into the club. Okay. So apparently there's an effort, if you will, reflective of a growing movement across the country as thousands of parents, teachers, clergy members, and community organizers have sought training on what they can legally do
right
when they see an immigration arrest. Okay. The Trump administration, however, has criticized bystanders recording immigration officials during enforcement operations. Okay. In July, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said violence against the agents includes videotaping ICE officers where they are at when they are out on operations, encouraging other people to come and throw things, rocks, bottles, etc.
Sounds like a peaceful protest, right?
So let's dissect that point for a minute.
Yep.
Standing on the sidewalk, okay, let's say you're 5, 10, 15 feet away, and you're videotaping with your phone, right? You're live recording a situation that is taking place. That's not violence.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's a public place, so you have the right to be able to do it. That's fine.
So it's, it goes back to the days of the term beat reporters. Okay. They're on the streets. They've got their notepads. They're taking notes. Right. That's the source of truth. Well, now that source of truth has changed to actual video footage showing it. So think about that for a second. We've gone from belief in the written word.
Yes.
Okay. To actually using video as a source of truth.
Yeah.
Okay. So videotaping someone is not, videotaping ICE officers specifically is not violent. So I do not agree with Kristi Noem on that point. Now, throwing things such as rocks, bottles, something else, that is absolutely violence against ICE. Okay?
Right.
And in that instance, that's a FAFO moment. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, you're asking. I mean, we were actually just looking a little bit earlier where a lady had posted her thing saying, I guess she had pushed an ICE agent. She pushed an ICE agent to protect her illegal friend. And what happened was that not only was she arrested and spent the jail and spent time a couple of days in jail, like she actually got fired from her job for doing so. So, I mean, the FAFO moments just keep rolling. And I agree with you, Tim. It's like, yes. I mean, I disagree with what, Kristi Noem might say. It's like, well, recording people like that, it's like, that's just something that, you can't do. It's an act of violence. No, but we just got done hearing from Caroline Levitt, who is the White House press secretary, who made it clear that ICE agents are now going to have body cams on them. So there's no difference in between there. So I think that's just kind of null and void.
Well, I think that was just only a matter of time before that was going to happen.
I mean, well, quite honestly, I don't understand why it didn't even happen earlier. I mean, the moment, because as you said before, it's like, you had in Chicago, the ICE agents were coming into Chicago around September.
Right.
So, and then we were having a situation where after that, they were starting to move up to Minnesota. So if they realized how violent that they were being in Chicago, especially being, the third largest city in the United States, why didn't they, when they noticed all the problems then, why didn't they start wearing body cameras then? Why did it take them to go to a smaller town, the smaller city, which might be maybe in the top 100 of population or so, to finally go like, oh, maybe we should start doing this now? Well, I think that would solve a whole lot more problems instead of, people always saying that every ICE agent's bad. And obviously I don't believe that. And also there's bad apples in every place, but at least it gives them a little bit of protection so that when somebody says, it's like, he pepper sprayed me or something like that, only to find out he's got a body cam on him. And the reason why he pepper sprayed you is because, you were holding a lead pipe or something like that and you started swinging at him. And all of a sudden it's got it on tape that he pepper sprayed you to defend himself, which he has the right to be able to do.
Right.
So
what I think is interesting is, one, the initiative these brothers have shown in trying to provide real-time accurate coverage, right? I mean, these brothers are couch surfing between family members' homes and Airbnbs.
How many family members they have?
It must be a big family. They are with an intent on, with the intent on documenting what some describe as the unprecedented aggressiveness of Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis. Okay. And I'm going to read a quote here from Ben, one of the gentlemen that we've been talking about. It says, federal agents are constantly pushing people and beating them up, kneeing them in the face when they are down on the ground or shoving their head into ice or pavement so that they're scraped up.
This is what they're saying?
The homeschooled boys spend their days in South Minneapolis following suspected federal vehicles in their silver 2018 Toyota Corolla, writing down license plate numbers and sending immigration agents locations in group chats with other observers.
Here's my question, where I see what they're doing and all, and they've also gained popularity and all. So, but what are they doing about homework?
So, as we did mention earlier, and that was going to come up, and so since you brought it up, we'll just go ahead and talk about it. They're homeschooling. Okay, well, let me back that up. The kids are homeschooled.
Right.
Okay. Between videotaping and posting, they're homeschooling. Everything that they learn takes place within an hour.
Okay, well, there you go. That gives them time. Okay, I got you.
So, and I thought that point was interesting because last week I had a conversation with a friend, and he was homeschooling. And you and I talked about this briefly before the show, partly because the attitudes that were being learned at a preschool age and how that was already coming home and you know, they weren't having it. But also everything the kids need could be taught in an hour. Okay. The core subjects, essentially. So a kid's not sitting there for 8 hours and then coming home with another hour or two of homework.
Well, they say it's like the Prussian educational system, where it's like we're only doing 8 hours worth of school, so because they want them to get used to working 8 hours.
Then why are they coming home with an extra 2 hours of homework on top of what
I get it.
being taught in class, right?
I get it. Or, I mean, because that was the whole point. They said the Prussian system was like you were either going to be a soldier or you were going to be a worker.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that mentality has been lost in translation, for sure. Okay. When the agents stop, so do the brothers, jumping out into frigid temperatures to film operations on their phones and Sam's chest-mounted GoPro camera that videos that they upload online. Since their arrival in Minneapolis 2 days after Good's death, they've captured hours of footage of protesters facing chemical irritants, beatings, and detentions.
Really?
Yeah. And again, you know, these kids, they'd rather be fly fishing and making music. Think about that. You're a 16 and 17-year-old kid, and your passion is fly fishing. You want to make your own flies, go test them out. But no, what are you doing? You're out documenting what is happening in the real world. Or you're interested in producing music. But their sense of civic duty, and that's what really caught me, is instead of turning a blind eye to what's happening, these kids are putting aside their hobbies or their passions out of, could you call it a moral obligation to make sure that information is being presented accurately and to the best of their knowledge factually? I mean, let's be honest. Some of the video that we have seen from all of this has not been the greatest.
You're right.
Okay. The whole Renee Good situation. There was a lot to try to decipher what really happened
Well, yeah, and I mean, I know we took some time, on the show trying to figure out from different angles where
And even
what was considered
we
true.
struggled.
Yeah, we did. We struggled to where so trying to look at so many different angles from a previous episode we did, and yeah, I mean, it was just really, really hard to tell, and also, but to answer your question, Tim, is like, yeah, I think I think the general thing of trying to say, okay, looking at from what these kids are is that, we're going to go out there and we're going to figure out, be able to tell the real story where so things that maybe the news is going to edit or anything like that. I mean, heck, I mean, just a couple months back or in the fall, I mean, you and I actually consider, wanting to do something very similar, and also because, obviously some of the situations that were going on with ICE were, in areas where they really weren't that far of a drive.
Now, and it's, to take a side road real fast for this, we started the UnWoke Show because we had similar interests, and it has now morphed into something that we never thought it would be. Mm-hmm. But, to steer the conversation back, for most of modern history, accountability flowed in one direction. Mm-hmm. Institutions acted. Media reported, the public reacted. And I had made that comment about smartphones earlier, mm-hmm. but phones have flipped that model. Now anyone can document power in real time. Mm-hmm. And young people understand this instinctively. To them, recording isn't confrontation, it's participation.
Right. And it's just, a part of them. I mean, they're able, they're so quick to, report something, anything. I mean, a fight in school. I mean, it's like whatever it might be. It's just like, they basically have their iPhones or their cameras attached to their hands.
Yeah. I think this is a great next point here. These brothers aren't trying to run policy or debate legal frameworks. Okay. That's, I can't stress that part enough. They're doing something more basic. They're essentially creating a record. Mm-hmm. In a time when official statements and public perception often don't line up, visibility becomes a form of oversight. Mm-hmm. Think about that for a second. When we were kids, we didn't pay attention to the news, right? Mm-hmm. We were off doing our thing. Being kids, playing outside, horsing around, doing whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But there was a time when the traditional media outlets were that source of truth.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, what kids are doing today, I mean, that is a cultural shift. Okay? This isn't about immigration enforcement in one city. It's about a generation that doesn't automatically trust press conferences, polished messaging, or institutional reassurance. They trust what they can see, save, and share.
Right. And that's why I think, podcasts and other shows, are so important now. And, as we had discussed before, I mean, we have now podcast hosts who are now even in the White House press conference, because people now trust, those, you could say, alternative avenues of information and media, that didn't happen before. And it's like, I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, of course, we're going to say it's a great thing because it gives us an opportunity to, like I said, be able to share the news that we feel might be important. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, great thing, man.
Yeah, we had no intentions of being a source of truth.
Nah.
Okay.
Nah.
We started this out as, like I said, a couple of guys sharing same thoughts, calling a spade. But I think in some circles, based on everybody that is tuned in and giving us shout outs and stuff, that I do feel that we are now a source of truth. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I do think that there's something powerful and yet unsettling about this. Okay. Powerful because ordinary people such as you and I, mm-hmm. and even teenagers can contribute to transparency in ways that were impossible a generation ago.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Unsettling because it suggests a gap, a space where trust used to live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If kids feel responsible for being the eyes on the ground, it means many people believe that the traditional lines of accountability aren't enough on their own.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make institutions irrelevant, and it doesn't make every recording a complete truth, but it does signal a shift in who society looks to when clarity is missing. Think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
A societal shift.
Yeah. It is, man. I think what it is, you always hear about like that back in, when there was a lot of protests back in the, 60s and 70s and all, where they say power to the people and they're like that. Well, you look at how, the way that social media and the way we're able to communicate with each other, I think it's a true physical sign where what power to the people really means, where people feel like, hey, I don't have to believe what legacy media tells me to say. The news where that our grandparents grew up with, with Walter Cronkite and
Right.
Downs and all those guys right there. I mean, they did exactly that, man.
They reported it.
Right.
And that was it.
Right, exactly. They reported it. They gave you the facts for it, and they were able to make you, be able to do your, be able to make up your own mind. And I know for me, where so with my time I had in communications and getting a degree and stuff like that, it's like, that's what they taught you. They taught you about, not plagiarizing, not doing those things, and, just being able to put the facts out there so that people can be able to understand what's going on. But the problem that we have nowadays is that, instead of getting those facts, all we're getting is op-eds.
Yep.
Editorials. I mean, just people's opinion. We got talking heads on CNN and Fox News and stuff like that. Where so and
CBS, ABC,
exactly
and
all these legacy media type places were so and what has now gone on is just people are just kind of asking the question where it's like, you're saying exactly what I expect you to say, but where do I get another perspective from? And also, what did they do? So they started getting like for instance, where it's, you have one network where there might be more right wing and all. They always have 5 people sitting around, and they might have one person that might be the opposition party in this particular case, and they do the same thing, on other stations as well, because they figure, okay, maybe that's a way to kind of make things, quote, fair and balanced, and that's going to be all right or where. So, but even with that, and that's been going on for a while, and of course we go back into the last 4 to 5 years, it's still more of a thing of, in the end, whatever the majority narrative is for that particular network, that's what they're going to go with.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's so important, and that we as podcasters and other influencers, where, make sure that we understand we have a responsibility to the listeners and the viewers and the audience, where that we have a job to do. And, and we have enough trust that, at least we could speak for here, that sure, we have many states that have listened to us, and but also people who have listened to us across the world. Yeah. And so it's like, hey, you know what? We know that they're doing their stuff. Again, we appreciate you guys listening in. And but this is the way I think media is now going, where everybody basically is a network.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And so I'm going to leave it with this. In a world full of noise, the simple act of watching and keeping a record has become a form of civic participation. Okay. And that tells us as much about the state of trust in our society as any policy debate ever could. Okay. UnWoke Nation, we're going to leave it right there for you guys. We love talking to you all, as always, and you can find us on all the major podcasting platforms. You can reach us directly at feedback@unwoketheshow.com. Again, that is feedback@unwoketheshow.com. Rich, a pleasure as always, man. And remember, guys,